Well, welcome everyone. Again, my name is Pat Buchanan here with Dude Solutions. I've had the pleasure of setting foot in all 50 states plus most of the Canadian provinces in a facilities operational department. So I've had the quality of learning a lot about how a lot of your organizations operate. And with that, I've heard a lot of feedback about what's important to track in a solution. What type of data do we track? And that also definitely leads into, well, what's the quality of the data that I've already been capturing for many years, and maybe how can I improve that over time? So before we jump right into the presentation here, I'm going to actually talk a lot initially about why should you or anyone else attend Dude University. So for me, it's very important to myself. In 2019, it'll be my 25th year working with supporting, implementing, designing, maintenance, operational software. Dude University has been a place that's given me a tremendous amount of knowledge about our industry. It's a great place to speak and learn from your peers about how they deal with some of the same daily challenges that you're faced with. Also, I have the pleasure of speaking with a lot of new employees here at the Dude. And I often tell them, well, you never truly understand what we provide or what service that we give our clients until you attend Dude University and hear it firsthand from our clients. Dude University even means so much to me that that's even where I asked my wife to marry me. So that's also another little known fact. And then if you're a new client, an existing client that's used our solution for many years, or even a prospect that have never used our solution and are just evaluating us, that's the best opportunity, best place to gain feedback, hear it from other peers like yourself, and see what they achieve with a solution, what challenges they will get. And even a lot of our classes are even taught by peers like yourself. So we have a lot of self-led classes by our clients. There's a hands-on learning lab that gives you the opportunity where if you're new, you get hands-on training with the solution. If you're an experienced client, then you really come to learn to take the next step. Maybe I should be reviewing my key performance indicators. I want to come and see how I compare nationally against other folks, or how am I benchmarking myself. So really a lot of great opportunities to take that next step in your career, in your facilities, by attending Dude University. And for our agenda, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a little preview of, as Kate mentioned, one of the classes that I teach a lot at Dude University: garbage in, garbage out, quality of data. I also speak a lot about our business intelligence solution, Dude Intelligence. So we'll give you a couple overviews of those. But to kick this off, I recently read a study on 2018 from a chair, and it was a technology trends. So it's a great one. I've got the source here. We'll also chat that out and send that out to everyone. But it's a real great report. And one of the big things I saw about technology trends coming up in the future is, first off here, this next slide I just pulled up, the different formats or different ways that we get data, different ways that we interpret data. How do we learn things? And here's 4 different examples. So for this report, they provided a full report, so a full PDF report that you could download, and they said it took 45 minutes. They gave a short report, kind of a snippet of those major highlights, a 20-minute overview. Some people that didn't want to do anything with reading, they gave you a visual view of that. So they still see the view of a PowerPoint slide. And then lastly, there was even an audio view of that. Okay. So we definitely learn, we interpret things in a lot of different ways. And just to make sure, I've started going through a PowerPoint here, and then I've got a share out here where I've got that shared for everybody. And I see a few chats coming in. There's been some questions on if we're able to see our slides. So now we'll make sure that everyone's starting to see our PowerPoint here. All right, if anyone's having difficulty viewing our presentation, make sure you chat in. Okay, great. Sorry about that, everyone. Now we're starting to have people chat in. They can start seeing the slides. Now we're starting. Nope. Okay. See, we're also learning stuff here on the fly here. So let's go ahead and try out the desktop here. Okay, so everybody keeps seeing my face. We definitely don't want everyone to see our face. All right, Kate.
Usually when we start a Zoom, there are 2 different screens that show up. So if you guys are seeing one with just Pat's picture, look for another pop-up, and it should have different options to engage. Yes, I see that some people are starting to find that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. So it appears that it might have opened that up in a pop-up.
Yeah.
I've got a slide now that says different options to engage. That should be the slide that we have. So on your window on your computer, there may be another pop-up window you have to click to get off the picture of myself so you can get right to the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
All right, great. All right, sorry about that, everybody.
Great picture though, Pat.
Oh, yes. All right. All right, so again, as I'll get back here. So as we're talking about data quality, there's a lot of different options for everyone to engage. So not everybody learns the same way. Some people like to dig right into the details. They want a full detailed report of that. Some folks want a short summary view of that report. So they just want a kind of just give me the highlights. Let me just focus on that quick data points and move on from there. You know, a lot of us, we need to see that picture to be able to move on and navigate through. And then some of us want to hear the audio version of that. So there's a lot of different ways that we can engage and dictate and figure out different options. So with this recent technology vision study, it mentions 5 key trends. I definitely highlight, and we'll send that out to everybody so you can actually view this report and also get into these detailed slides as well. But one of the big highlights that I want to focus on is the data accuracy. So trend 3, when it talks about the data veracity. So we're going to focus on the quality of data that we have in the solution. What do we look at day in, day out? Do we trust that data? Can it tell the story we're looking for? So there's a lot of different points here that we're going to focus on more, just the data quality aspect of it. So we're really going to focus on how well do we trust the data that we have in our solution? Can we rely on making sure that data is accurate? So, you know, everybody knows there's different people going to be using our system, so we got to focus on the quality of that data. All right. So in this study, it also tells another great story that you just don't always see data and dictate that data back to someone else. You need to interpret that data, need to understand it. So in that study, they gave the good old example for 35 years ago, where there was a Soviet officer that saw a blip on the radar. Now that typically would have told him that there was a nuclear missile launch that was being aimed at the Soviet Union from the United States. Well, fortunately, that officer viewed that data point and then he looked for more context. So he actually said, well, there would be more strikes coming from here. So when they uncovered, waited, interpreted that data a little bit more before he passed that on to other officials, found out it was just a blip on the radar that really saw that. So it was more sunlight off the clouds. So just by looking at the data, you've got to interpret it, use your own business knowledge to make sure you're getting the point across and make sure that data is telling the story that you need to get it. Now, also this report talks about having confidence in your data. What's the steps of having confidence in your data? Most clients I talk to, they definitely have some concerns with their data. Most folks feel comfortable with the descriptions of their work. They feel comfortable with what's open versus what's completed. But beyond that, that's usually where some of our clients run into some issues with quality. And so having a data veracity check and balance to see how are we verifying this data that people are entering in our system? What is it providing? You know, how are we securing that data? Who has access to that? And with that, there's billions of dollars spent each year on data. How are we using this data? How can it be beneficial? But one of the huge things is, well, if we don't put measures in place to make sure we're capturing good data, then of course it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. And there was also a study in this report. I'd actually mentioned the United Airlines. They were spending, $1 billion. They were missing $1 billion of lost revenue based on some forecast. They had a decades-old system that was not providing an accurate model of how people were flying. So that was costing them a lot of money, a lot of revenue by the way of reviewing that data. So you've got to make sure you've got some processes in place that looks at your data, make sure it's helping provide and tell the story that you're trying to tell. So this is also very true. We've got a lot of sources of data. There's a lot of different people in your organization that's probably going to be using your solution, using your system. They're going to be submitting data, entering data in, closing things out. So we've got to have a process in place that helps us make sure that the data is giving us the output that we desire. So one final slide on that recent tech study is, making sure that we're having good data quality is going to help your organization tell the desired story. Next, let's transition over to work management. Let's go a little bit more about having good data accuracy. How can that help us in our day-to-day operations? So let's talk about, and we're going to go into a few more slides that drill into this more, but we're going to talk about what does your data look like? What do you review? How do you get better data? And how do I compare and contrast to other performers or other peers like myself? So can your data tell the story you need it to, and will it lead you to the correct answers that your organization needs to tell? So again, speaking to most clients that I talk to day to day on a day in, day out basis, they usually all tell me they have some level of concerns about their data. So how are we going to build better confidence in our data? One big step is, well, we should be reviewing that data on a monthly, quarterly basis. So are we looking at data from Dude Intelligence and looking at our month-by-month trend? When do we have our peak time and when work orders are processed through our solution? When is our peak time when we're trying to get PM or preventive maintenance performed in our organization? So there's a lot of different environments. There's a lot of different steps that we have to put in place to make sure we're verifying our history of our data and making sure it's giving us accurate place or picture of our story. So in the upcoming slides, we'll talk about what data points or what key elements should we review. Let's look at who's entering data, who's screening that data once it's entered into the system, who processes or completes work. So when we're talking about work management, who's completing that work order? And then after that work order is processed, or is there anybody looking at that work order after the fact? So before we start running reports, before we start doing our monthly, quarterly, semi-annual reports, are we looking at our work orders, making sure things are getting timely updated in our system so we can tell the story we need it to tell? So first off, who's entering work? So that's a common thing when we talk to a lot of our clients is, well, what or who can enter requests? A lot of people fear initially, well, if I give too many people access to my solution, what is that going to be, a positive or a negative impact of our solution? Is that going to give us too many work requests coming through? Will we get too many duplicates? So when we talk and study at the data, our clients overwhelmingly that allow more people to input requests, it typically helps some with the data quality. And one big reason why it helps with the data quality is that data is going into a system, it's being recorded, it's sending out email notifications, and people are just have that mindset, well, I know this is going to a system, someone can look at this data, and that's going to be something that can provide more feedback to our individuals. So when we go into the data, this is the most trustworthy data that a lot of clients tell me. Well, I'm going to trust the description of that work. I'm going to trust that it's open. I'm going to trust that it's being completed. But beyond that, that's usually where some of our clients start having some hesitancy. Well, do we have the proper craft or trade or department that's going to do the work? Do we track the purpose of why we did that work? So those are some other big areas that a lot of our clients are starting to consider. Who can create requests? You know, talking of technicians, we hear more and more folks that are having their technicians out in the field, being more proactive. They're using smartphones, they're using tablets, they're even using voice to text to even create better action takings and description of work orders when they initially create the work order or when they solve that work order. And we want to make sure that we're capturing all the work that we're doing so our team and our individuals get credit for that work. Another important step is, well, if we've got data in the system, are we taking time to review and look at that data? You know, who's screening that work? Do we have an approval process in place? You know, a lot of that's going to dictate the size of your organization. So if you're a small organization, you just got maybe one or two folks that are going to be responding to requests, then in that situation, you know, there's not going to be much of an approval process. The work's coming in, you're getting it, and you're managing it when you have time. Now, larger organization, typically there will be a more detailed approval process in place. We may have a department head, we may have a work control group that screens and reviews that request, and up front they try to make sure they've got the right action team to respond to it, the right purpose code, the right craft or category of that work. So making sure that we capture better data on the front end can lead to a lot better data quality down the road once we're done with jobs. And something else that we've been spending more time and effort on our side is making sure we give you a better view when you log into the solution. What's some key things I should view as soon as I log into the solution? You know, what's the most important things that I need to take some action on right away? So my home page, when I log into the system, that's another area that we're really focusing some time and effort to make sure that when I log into the solution, what should I see when I navigate through the system? What's the key data points that you need me to respond to when I get into the work management system? And along with that, we also are working to give you more views or better views so you can customize. If I'm just focusing on open jobs, let's just go to a view that's only going to show me just those open jobs where I can go through and navigate. Or if I'm just looking at completed work to make sure people are capturing the right fields on that, I want to go through and just see that completed request of that job so I can focus on that. So those are some other things that a lot of you may have started being transitioned to, or that you will be getting transitioned to over the next year, is a better view or some better ways to access and push out data to your people that are using your solution day in, day out. So another big important data quality point is who can complete requests. You know, a lot of us out there, we're still on paper. Now more and more of you started to open up, you've got more tablets, you got more smartphones in your organization, you're allowing your staff to log into the solution, you're using some apps to process and manage those work orders. So that's another way that can improve your data in the system. You know, if I have somebody that has that work order fresh on their mind, then if I go through and respond to that work order right away, put my notes on that work order, then I'm more apt not to forget all the details of what I did to solve that issue. So that's another thing. When I'm completing that work order, do I tag it? If it was a major equipment issue, do I tag it back to that piece of equipment? So those are some things that you're just trying to get more data, more quality to. So when it's time to share data, when you've got data in your work management system, you want to tell your story about how your organization is doing. How often are we looking at that data? You may only present to your organization, maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's semi-annual, but your inter-department managers, you should be meeting with them on a regular basis. Maybe it's weekly, maybe in some cases it's monthly, and reviewing some of the key data points in the system to see, okay, what data elements are we using, or maybe what should we change? Just because we use a few fields in the program today doesn't mean several months from now we may need to shift things and change. Because there's a lot of data fields that are available to you. Often when you're starting up, you feel confident in the people that are entering the description of that problem, or you're at least modifying that once it gets to your department. You feel comfortable with the location of where your staff is going out to solve the problem. You're comfortable with the work orders open or the status of that job that marking is being completed. And then beyond that, after you start going through, well, are we comfortable with the dates? Are we changing the actual completion date to make sure we have that? And in all these cases, especially when you have drop-down fields, are we being more consistent with those options? And my next slide goes into that more. If there's certain keywords or phrases we want to make sure we've got and take advantage of those out there. So again, there's a lot of fields. Doesn't mean you're going to use every one of these fields day one, but slowly as you find out, well, we've got this project, I need to start tracking how many times we've had that same, we've done work for that particular project. Well, let's create a project and link multiple work orders to it. Or we have a purpose or a reason that we keep having to do work over and over again. Well, let's create up a purpose code or a cause and attach those work orders to that so we can see what's the pattern of that work so we hopefully can respond to some of those issues. So some other things that is evolving with our solutions is we're giving you more customization in the solutions. We're letting you set up more fields like purpose codes, priority fields, status, your work categories. We're giving you more options that you can create your own choices in these drop downs where they've been really locked down for a lot of you in the past. So some big thing here really is if you're customizing these fields, are you making sure that you've got good data in there? It's easy for people to know that when I'm completing that work order, what's the right priority? Do you have priorities just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Or am I using, emergency, high, medium, low? If I'm creating some custom statuses down the road, am I using the proper terminology that people know that, okay, it's complete, it's been closed out? So just making sure we're using proper terms where it makes it easy for us to run reports and roll data up for different departments in the future. And some other things we hear from our clients, some folks have a random process where every so often work orders, maybe it's every 100 work orders, depending upon your size, maybe it's every 10, where they have some managers that will spot check those for each department just to look at the description, the action taken. They'll even call the person who created that work order and just make sure, okay, how do we do on responding to that work? So just getting some more feedback about how are we handling ourselves when we go into your facility to solve a problem. So just getting more data that we can use to hopefully improve our organization. Some folks survey their work orders. They'll set up a survey on something like with Google Form or SurveyMonkey, and they'll set up the program where it actually sends out some automated surveys on a regular basis. Some folks have teams that will go out, and when they're doing PM, they'll go to certain places in the organization and talk to more people who submit work orders. Again, just different ways to spot check data to make sure it's going to be available for you to get better reports in the future. Here's another issue that I've heard a lot of folks in the past. They say, well, I've talked to my folks out in my facilities and they told me it's too hard to submit a work order. And a lot of times it could be that simple fact that there's just too many options that we've turned on. There's too many icons or too many choices in a drop-down box that we've provided people, and they're just too confused with how to make a request. Where maybe if we just streamline that submittal process, give them just a few choices, maybe that will make things easier for us to get better quality data. Maybe it'll deter people from picking general maintenance or miscellaneous for all of our work orders, because that's one issue. Miscellaneous and general maintenance should not be typically in your top views of work that you're responding to. Hopefully they're going to be categorized as those departments. HVAC typically are going to be pretty high up in your place, your electrical, your roofing, HVAC, all those different departments you're working with, is making sure that you've got good data that you can hopefully use and see where do we need to spend more time and effort? Where should we be doing more PM? So just making sure that even on the front end, if they choose something like general maintenance or miscellaneous, when you folks review that work order or you approve it or you complete it, somebody goes back in, looks at that work order and makes sure it gets classified as the right type of maintenance. Transactions is another thing. That could be something initially when you're starting with a solution, you're just tracking what's open versus what's completed. Then you may be taking the next step and you're saying, well, I want to start capturing how many hours that we're spending on work. Maybe how many dollars worth of parts are we spending? How much are contractors charging us to do maintenance? Is it cheaper to do it by contracting it out or doing it internally ourselves? So being able to have more data points to make some of those decisions could be important for you. Well, the flip side is if you're just starting in that transaction mode, you're starting to capture those, there's a lot of times where you can have bad data on those transactions. I've seen so many times where people are just going through and they're doing some of the data entry forms or mass entering data as quickly as possible. And then sometimes it's very easy where you can accidentally type the date field in the quantity or a cost field, and then that leads to some huge cost. You know, even ourselves, when we're doing benchmarks, we're doing key performance indicators, we also go in and omit a lot of bad data where we're saying, okay, don't give us any negative values. Don't give us any work orders that are costing over $1 million or have over thousands of hours attached to that one work order. So there's different things that maybe we should do on a regular basis. Maybe we should just go to the transaction form, sort that by quantity or sort it by actual cost and see if we've got any crazy numbers that would, you know, millions and millions of dollars out there where we just have maybe a data entry error that we just missed when somebody was entering data. So it just gives you, that's another area, whether it's labor, whether it's materials, parts, inventory, that could be something where you just click on the column headings, you sort them so it can sort it by descending order so you can look through and see more information. And this next slide shows that, you know, we got some cases it's easy to get that bad data into the system where you see minimum and maximum amounts when we look at actual hours and labor costs. So it's very easy that, hey, we've all done it where we can miss type a field in when you forgot to hit the tab key. So again, just some other things you should look at on a regular basis. Let's look at if we're capturing costs, we're capturing hours on work orders. Let's just review that data periodically to make sure we don't have any huge outliers that could cause problems. Another big thing that can cause poor data quality throughout your organization is those good old web browsers. Now, it's great that you can access your system from any device that's connected to the internet, but the flip side of that, some of you have some pretty old devices or tablets or smartphones that pop up in your organization that gets handed down to your staff. In some cases, it could be some super old web browsers on those, and some of those old web browsers do not enforce good data quality. So if a field's marked as mandatory or required, some cases if we access that form with some of these super old web browsers, and sometimes that will bypass checks in the software and still allow data to go into a system without a mandatory or required field. So if you go to something like the advanced search in your solution, you sort by blank values, that can pop up and tell you, uh-oh, I've got some bad data in some of these fields that I want to get reports on. And speaking of those null values, here's an example. So if I'm in my solution, we added a choice where I can look for blank records for certain key fields in the system. So if I want to go through and see, okay, craft's a very important field to me. I want to make sure we're tagging those for something other than general maintenance or miscellaneous. I can go through and look for blank and or maybe general maintenance, look for miscellaneous, run that report. It'll show me how many work orders maybe for this physical year. I'll click on those and maybe update those one at a time as I review the description of those. Now, for some of you that have been using what we call Dude Intelligence, our business intelligence tool, there's an operational dashboard that for those of you that have moved to the addition of the solution that does have Dude Intelligence, is there are some dashboards available for you. And something that we got some good feedback from clients that we were asked to add is, hey, give me the ability to search when I'm missing fields or I'm missing data so I can drill in and see, okay, where's that work order coming from? Or in this case, on my slide I have up on my screen, I've got over $91,000 worth of work I've done that's not associated to a shop or a department. Well, the work of that, the quantity, there's 525 of those work orders. Well, I need to make sure I give people credit for doing that work. By not having those work orders categorized or classified, then I'm missing a point there. So data quality checks, maybe if assigning work to people that are getting completed is important to me, or craft or purpose code, those are some things that we do also provide for you to make that easy for you. And what a lot of us say is more of a next step. Well, I'm comfortable tracking progress on what's open versus what's completed. Maybe I've started tracking some maybe labor hours. I've got my technicians using the app to swipe in how much time they're spending on work. Well, maybe a next level is, well, do I have equipment records? Do I have PM schedules? Maybe there's filter changes, safety inspections that I could set up as a simple PM schedule that's going to come out on a regular basis that I can capitalize on and have more folks take advantage of that. So I definitely would say equipment would be more of a next step of that, of being able to see where the major pieces of equipment that we work on, where are they located at? Are we tracking corrective maintenance versus PM on our equipment? Hopefully we've got a good ratio that we're able to spend some time and effort on PM versus corrective maintenance. And then earlier I mentioned that some of us also like the survey work. Some of you, based on the addition of our solution that you have, you'll have a survey option where you can set up an automated survey and say, I want to survey, in this case, 100% of my work orders based on a certain status. Once they're moved over to close, send this email to SurveyMonkey or Google Forms for people to fill out. And then I'll have some data, a little bit more data about how well we're responding to things that we're working on. Okay, so to summarize here, your data accuracy, your data veracity is important. This visual is used a lot. Is it the carrot or the stick? We got to evolve. We got to find a healthy balance of providing the data accuracy that can tell the story. So how do you incentivize that? Do we understand, does our group, our staff, instead of saying, okay, it's just Big Brother, you're forcing me to enter extra data on a work order, do they understand the importance of that data, and why is it important for us to capture that work that we're getting completed? All right, so that's a real brief summary of the garbage in, garbage out presentation. So it's a real recent version of that presentation that we provide. Another class that I do a lot at Dude University goes into and starts talking about what we label and brand as Dude Intelligence. So Dude Intelligence is our business intelligence tool where we provide you a little bit more data insights about what you're achieving with your solution. So if you're a new client, you're just starting to use some of these solutions, or if you've been using them many years, it's good to see what others are achieving with a solution. So if I'm just getting started with a product or a solution, well, maybe how many work orders per technician are they capturing? How many hours of wrench turning time are they capturing across the country? So those are some things that we've done for many years. We've given you some benchmarks so you can see how you compare to your peers all across the nation. Some newer things that we're going to be rolling out when we get to Dude University 2019 is some more options for benchmarks. We've had a lot of clients say, I like to also be able to benchmark myself against maybe more organizations that are closer to my same size. Some folks are even looking at more regional type indexes. So we're definitely evolving the benchmarking. We'll do more classes at Dude University and share that more to you. But when you're logged in your solution, if you're on an edition that has access to this Dude Intelligence, there'll be a drop-down box under your quick links where you can choose Dude Intelligence, and you'll at least have some key performance indicators. And then based on if you're on some of the newer editions of our solution, then you'll also have an operational dashboard. And then you also have some trending. How am I doing the past 3 years plus this current year on my organization? So I can see month by month, how are we improving upon this solution, or how we made a change in our organization? How does that affect us long term, and what's been the improvement that we've got by making a certain change? So kind of going into what we call Dude Intelligence and all this data, we also use this data to capture a client health score. So that's something that we've been doing on our back end. How well are folks adopting to these solutions that we provide? So whether we've given you enough training, are you contacting us? Are you proactively reaching out to our support team? we look at a lot of data points, even outside of just what you're entering in the solution, to make sure we're giving you the proper data, or what else can we provide you to help you be more successful with your solutions. So we have some entrenchment factors. We have some performance that we even track internally to make sure that we're giving you the best support to make you successful with your solutions. So I'm going to give you a few examples of these key performance indicators, some trending, the operational dashboard, and in some cases, we even have folks that want us to build a custom dashboard based on some key metrics they even want to track internally. All right, so here's a stat we actually shared out on social media recently, Monday. So 21% of all work orders over the past year came in on Mondays. So that's a good, just kind of a stat out there just to catch you, just kind of get somebody's attention of, if I'm giving a presentation out there and what's something attention grabber I can give to my staff? Well, right away, boom, 21% of my work orders are coming in right away on Monday. So there's a tremendous amount of volume that you're faced with day in, day out of all these issues that are piled upon you when people get back in your facilities, or if people have been away for a few days or getting back in on a Monday, then typically there's an influx of maybe complaints you're dealing with. Your staff's walking down the hall, they're getting told a lot of different problems. So how are we capturing that data into the solution? How are we getting that? So dealing with, different challenges that you may be faced with one day of the week to the next day of the week. How are your staff responding to that influx of maybe requests are getting in the hallways? Are they making sure to tell people, great, hey, we've got a lot of work orders that are coming in today. Please make sure you use the solution. Make sure you submit that request to us so we have it properly documented in the solution. We're making sure that we give it the proper prioritization. So please enter that problem so we can give it the proper attention. So again, that's just one other example of how we're using data and giving it back to you to see if that can hopefully give you more data points in your organization. So just a moment on KPIs. So at Duke University, we also talk a lot about, well, what is a KPI? What's the importance of a key performance indicator? So we're trying to really right off the bat, well, why is it important for us to even think about a KPI or a key performance indicator? What can it help us with? And some of the things that it definitely focuses on is, well, what are my vital signs? How do I compare to someone else? Maybe in some situation, what's possible? And if I make some improvements or I make some changes, what can I possibly achieve in the future? All right. And then what KPIs can't do, the other thing we definitely stress is, especially at Duke University, you've had several folks come up to me and say, okay, Pat, you got these KPIs, you've taught these classes, you share with us. Now I want to go back and have my staff make sure we're in the top 10% of every one of these KPIs. Well, right off the bat, then that's something we want to caution you on. Based on the way you operate, based on the size of your group, there's going to be things that you do differently or you have to do differently. So just because we launch a KPI, it doesn't mean you need to stop everything in your group and change things to focus solely on how we can do better in that KPI. Sometimes the KPI is just not going to be important for you, but a lot of times they can help you lead to an answer you're trying to achieve. Who's doing best in a situation? How do they get that? What change do they make? And by coming to Duke University and hearing other peers share their ideas in these classes, why is that KPI even important for them? We have clients that will give feedback and share, why they use a certain KPI. What executive summary do they share with folks on a regular basis? All right. And then again, there's a lot of studies out there. Why are they valuable? They're showing progress. We're not just guessing on feedback. So it's just giving us a lot of more information that we can absolutely use. And then a huge other big thing is benchmarking. How is it important for me to see, or is it important? In some cases, it may not be important for you to compare and see how you're looking at on a regular basis. Here's one that some people love it, some people aren't as crazy about it. Well, what percentage of maintenance do I get completed in 7 days or less? Is that something that's real important for my organization? Well, we've heard some folks say, great, that's a great measurement. We really like looking at that. And then the flip side of that, what percentage of work do of planned maintenance or PM do I get completed every month? You know, if I have my PMs generated at the beginning of the month, my staff goes out and tackles those. How well do they get those completed amongst the regular day-to-day work they're getting dropped on them? So some people say, great, that's a great metric I want to track. So what we've also been working into our operational dashboard, you know, some clients say, well, maybe percentage of corrective maintenance, reactive maintenance in 7 days or less, maybe that's not real good for me. But maybe I like to break that down in buckets of days. Maybe it's 0 to 7, 7 to 15, 15 to 30, 30 to 60, 90 plus, not just on what's open, but also what's been completed. So something we've got some feedback from clients that we've been adopting some change that we're going to be rolling out in the operational dashboard is also give you some buckets of how long has it taken us to get work done. If 0 to 7 isn't something that's real important to us, well, let's look at some different maybe buckets of days and see what those mean to our organization, and see if that is, again, something that we should look at. But again, just because we give you that benchmark, it doesn't mean, okay, we're going to stop everything we do and we're going to make sure we're at 100%. Again, that just may not be based on the type of maintenance you respond to. It just may not be possible. And then also with some of these KPIs, you may have work orders you don't want that KPI to be affected by. So if I go through and categorize that work as maybe scheduled maintenance as a priority, or I go through and mark it as emergency work order, then it's not going to affect that work order in my KPI. So there's also some other things behind the scenes that we do, where if you do have certain work orders you want to omit from a KPI, there are also some backdoor ways that some folks will use to bypass those. All right, and then the other thing that some clients really like to look at is different types of data points. So again, this is something we've had for a while and something we've been definitely working on expanding, is based on where I'm at. Maybe it's by square feet, maybe it's by technician, maybe it's by the population or enrollment where I'm at, my size, region, or state. So we're working through giving you more benchmarking options to let you definitely have different ways or different data points to see how you compare to others. Back on the data quality that we talked a lot about early in the presentation. Well, again, there's lots of fields, and then also in incoming editions of the solution, there's going to be a lot more fields made available for you. And again, all those fields doesn't mean we've got to stop what we do and start using a new field that we may roll out to you. So there's a lot of different fields that we're going to provide to you. In some cases, we're going to show you what percentage of your work orders have that field populated when they're completed. But again, that field may not be something that's a very important part to you that you need to jump in and right away use. And then another thing that we also touched on earlier, outliers. That's something that we look at and we remove. So I mentioned early on that if we find a work order is aged more than 365 days, it took us more than a year to respond to, or we've got millions of dollars or hundreds of hours on one work order, there's some factors that we put in place to omit those so it's not skewing your data. So there's some other things. We put in some data quality checks even on our own to look to make sure we're ensuring that you're getting better data quality of information in your solutions. And then for your organization, we got a lot of data on our website, out in our Dude community. There's a lot of information where we go through and list, okay, what are some common KPIs that we hear your organizations like yourself that may use on a regular basis. So we've got a lot of white papers on this. We've got a lot of data on our community. We do a lot of classes at Dude University about it. But some people say, well, I'm real interested in my ratio. What's my reactive to PM ratio? Are we just responding to major issues all the time and we can't do any PM? Well, maybe I need to start working on getting some teams to try to do some planned maintenance. Well, if I know that and again, that's another white paper that we've done where we studied what's the impact of doing PM. If I'm doing more PM, well, guess what? There's a reduction on emergency work orders. I have less failures on my equipment by just simply putting my eyes on it, looking at it, doing visual inspections. I'm finding minor problems before they become major problems. So there's a big issue out there of, well, if I'm able to look at items, what does that mean to me? How can that help my organization? So by just doing some basic PM schedules, getting the staff looking at the equipment more often, then hopefully we can find some of these minor problems before they become major problems. How many hours of wrench turning time are we capturing? Nobody's going to capture 40 hours of maintenance every single weekend, week out. We've got, some of you got windshield time, some of you got meetings that we're going through that you got to work with. My energy for my square footage, what's my energy cost per my square feet? So based on whatever type of organization you are, again, maybe it's population, whatever metric, maybe it's per technician, what are we spending out there for our group? Do we know our current replacement value? Do we know our facility condition index? Who's entering what percentage of requests do we have to manually input into a solution, or that we have people using our tools that automate? So again, there's a lot of white papers, a lot of studies out there, a lot of documentation that we're providing about KPIs and again, these have been all driven based on clients like yourself that have come to Dude University. They've given us feedback and said, well, I really like to measure myself in this area. How do I do that? What percentage of my work, I know that I have a high volume of HVAC reactive maintenance. Well, how does that stack up to the peers? Or I got a lot of roofing issues. Does that mean I'm gonna have to start spending more time on roofing? So there's some other areas that we've been also starting to produce, or we'll continue to give out more data for you to help you gain more insights to hopefully make that next decision in your organization a little easier to make. And then to help deal with these challenges that we're faced with day in, day out, we've got over 11,000 clients that we're mining data. We're trying to give you some insights from. There's 10 billion gross square feet of space that you are managing, you're dealing with. So there's a tremendous amount of data. We're hearing a lot of common questions. I've mentioned some of these already. And what we've been doing is we get these questions, we look at the data and see what we can provide to you. What can maybe there's a new KPI, maybe there's a new data point that we can share with you that can help you tell that story. Where are my worst roofs? I want to compare one site versus another site. How do I do that? What are my capital needs? What's the condition of each site? Are they good, fair, poor? For my HVAC systems, my roofing. So there's a lot of common questions we get asked day in, day out when we go to different shows, talk to many clients, prospects, organizations. We hear a lot of these common questions, and that really drives different feedback. So we're trying to take this data, we're turning into information and knowledge and hopefully wisdom to help you get things progress with the solution. So even ourselves, we've got all this data, we're putting it in a data lake, we're aggregating that data, we're using machine learning to try to come out with different inputs of that. We're looking at the descriptions of your work. How can we help you categorize that maintenance? Let's look at the description field. Can we give you maybe something like a uniformat class of that work by just based on the text that people are entering and typing on a work order? So we're constantly evolving, look at the new technology that's out there and trying to see where can we help you get more wisdom in your organization by taking better advantage of the data that you have in your solutions. So with that, Kate, I'll turn it back over to you. What questions do we have out there?
So I have one to start with, and it is from earlier in your presentation, and it says, I'm starting to work with Microsoft Power BI to consolidate data for our managers. Do you currently have any integration with this?
Oh, good question. So internally, a lot with our organization, we deal with a lot of clients that have Power BI. Some clients use Excel. We use a tool called Qlik, Q-L-I-K, a lot internally. But yeah, we don't definitely say you've got to use one data tool versus another data tool. If you're on some of the later editions of our solutions, there's different APIs or different ways you can connect to your data to integrate it with Power BI or whatever other tool that you may have. That if you already have a tool in place that you're comfortable with, you like designing reports on, we definitely have some flexibility there. And even if you're on maybe not the most recent versions of our solution, then there still can definitely be reports that you maybe email to yourself or export out to Excel, and then even attach that with something like Power BI to even run some more analysis on.
All right, I have another. I'm going to put live our poll question while I answer or ask the rest of the questions.
Okay, great.
So we can get answers for that. So if you guys want more information about Dude U or data quality in your account and Dude Intelligence and stuff like that, let us know here, and I will just keep asking the questions that we've got. There was one from about the middle of the presentation that said, can you set it up as a reminder for users to be forced to complete the surveys or incentivized?
Yeah, that's a excellent question. We can't fully automate that process yet with our solution. We are currently using an outside. We're letting you decide what tool you use for the surveys. So again, some people love using a tool like SurveyMonkey. Some people use Google Form. So we haven't automated that fully into the solutions that we provide. So we don't have a way to lock that in and make sure they have to fill in or give you a survey result for that. It's something that our team was reviewing on the roadmap. Does it make sense? Should we provide that tool or that type of feature within the product itself versus a third-party tool to give you that where we have better control over that? So it's something that we haven't definitely fully decided what's the best route for us to go long term. So right now there's not a way to fully lock that down yet.
Okay. Another one that we just got in is, are there any recommendations for people starting from scratch to get good data or prevent bad data from getting in?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So when I talk to a lot of clients, some of the key things that we hear folks that have been successful with this journey is, well, they've had little small teams in their organization that's discussed, and they've met with different department managers on, okay, what's key data? What's important for you? And they'll talk to the different department heads. What data would you like to run on a regular basis? So I think a lot of it definitely boils down to making sure you're communicating with your staff, you're giving good feedback, you're listening to what's important to your folks out there in the field too. And I would say it's not also always just the technicians and administrators and supervisors that are completing the work, but also talk to the folks that are initiating the problems. What data should you share with your campuses or your sites on a regular basis to let them know that, hey, we've got a lot of work. It might have took us longer this month to respond to you than normal, but look, we had an influx of jobs that would come in, or we had a lot of PM we were trying to get to, and this is why PM is important for us. So a lot of those folks out in your sites, they may not know why PM is important, why you need to dedicate and spend more time on doing PM. So just make sure you're educating not just your technicians and your supervisors, but make sure you just have some regular meetings with people out in your organization. Even the higher ups you may only talk to a couple of times a year, make sure they're understanding. A lot of people talk about, how do I relate this in their everyday life? How do I relate it into how many houses that we clean on a regular basis? So a lot of different ways. Just make sure I'd say the biggest thing overwhelmingly is just communicating, having an open door of understanding what's important for people throughout your organization. What data do they also want to run, not just what you know or what your experience is telling you.
Awesome. So the rest of the questions that we got, for the sake of time, and they were a little bit more personalized, I'll make sure to pass those along to Pat. So if you didn't hear your question asked right now, but I'll be sure to send them to him so you guys can get an answer for that.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of questions on. I put my email address out in the chat, so I know there's a lot of folks that were asking questions. Well, if I've got something unique or I need something customized for reporting wise to my organization, so I put my email address in there. I can help get you right to the right team that can help you with some of that. Or again, Kate put up the poll there where if you need more information about data quality or account, I know a lot of you also had some difficulties. Some of you have pop-up blockers, and those pop-up blockers sometimes will block the second window outside of the initial slide that had my picture on it. So sometimes it's your web browser. It might have been a pop-up blocker that blocked that. So we'll definitely get these presentations out to you so you can see the slides and and see all the feedback from it. Hopefully that'll maybe spur a few more questions.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Pat, thank you for doing this for us today, and thank you everybody for attending and taking time out of your day to listen to us talk.
All right, thank you everybody.
Have a good one.